It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. I told you last week was going to be something else. I told you, and we've got another one ahead. Now, it's a mixed bag this week. And I just did a live stream for my patrons. If you're a patron, make sure you check out the YouTube video. That's just for you guys. It's not on my channel. For the public, where I talked about the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, because that's the highlight of the week. It's the highlight. And it's something rather phenomenal. But it doesn't mean you're going to win the lottery. Okay? I talked about that. That's not necessarily what all that good luck is going to be. And things may appear larger than they really are. We've got tempests in teapots. We've got mountains turning into molehills. And we've got conflicts exacerbating over issues that wouldn't normally cause issues. And then you're going to see things being swept under the rug. So we'll see what happens when we look at all those world events and more. I'm going to change things up because we have so much happening with this week. We've got the sun moving into Gemini. We have the Jupiter-Venus conjunction. The day that the full moon happened, so hours after the Venus-Jupiter conjunction becomes exact, we end up with the Sagittarius full moon. It's a very early degree of the full moon, and then we have Venus popping into Gemini, and then the week ends with Jupiter leaving Taurus and ingress into Gemini. Now that's all astrologicalese, and it doesn't mean a whole lot. So why don't you grab a cup of coffee, have some tea? I'm having some Darjeeling right now. Darjeeling that I brought back from England. Yeah. It's very tasty. And then you could have hot cocoa, some matcha, an iced tea, an iced coffee, and lemonade, whatever you're drinking. And we will go on with the show. So I'm going to be talking about all the big energy this week. You're going to see more than one boom. I told you that by the end of last week, the whole world would have a collective gasp. And I think that was the Iranian president's helicopter going down, because the whole world's like, what's going to happen? But we also don't want to keep our eyes off of Eastern Europe. I had predictions out about Germany, the floods, those happened. And also there was an explosion in Germany. I thought the police's explanation was a little fishy. So I'm going to keep my eyes on that. They're like, no, it wasn't a terrorist attack. It was gasoline. Interesting. We'll see. We'll see what's up with that. I think they're going to be trying to suppress information. I think it's going to be very difficult to do when Jupiter enters Gemini. And I think all bets are off. And so that stuff that's happening, it's a wild week. But it doesn't mean it has to be horrendous for you. And I'm going to have some strategies on how to deal with the energy this week. That's what we're going to talk about first up on deck. Then we're going to do patron shoutouts, because without my patrons, this podcast doesn't happen. And I want to thank each and every one of you for remaining. We did a big shift up. Speaking of interesting weeks, the Discord for the main group, the Awake Space, Awake Space Discord, just that Discord is gone. The Mystery School is still there, and the Planet of the Month is still there, just because I'm looking at how to serve those communities. But everything else is moved over to Patreon, and so you can get all your fun chat over there. Did a post, did an announcement. Sometimes people miss stuff in their emails, so if you're listening to the podcast, you're like, I haven't been able to find my Discord, come over to the Patreon. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, I'm going to give you your headlines at the end of the week. What I think is going to be coming up in the headlines. We'll do that at the end of the podcast. And if this ends up being a little long, we'll make it a two-parter. And the first part will be out in public, and the second part will be out for patrons We'll see if I do Q&A. I'll probably do a patron-only Q&A this week. Probably do that. Alrighty, dighty. So, you got your drink? Are we going to work? Folding laundry? Are you on pins and needles? I know when I did the live stream last night, people had a lot of trouble sleeping and were not getting. They all needed naps, but they weren't getting any. Here too. It's not a time to be holding focus. We're looking at a lot of things ending and a lot of new beginnings right now, especially since Mars crossed that Aries North node. That was a big kaboom and move forward. And that's not always easy to do. We're creatures of habit. We're creatures of habit. And we like to have our normal routines. So let's take a look here. All right. So, again, the sun is entering Gemini, so you can expect the energy to become a little more quick, a little more clear, okay? But it could also be sharp, okay? It could be very sharp energy. And so with Gemini energy moving fast, it's fast and bright, it's effervescent, but it can be very sharp. I expect to see in the mundane world, I expect to see some things that are a little like glass shattering, issues with air traffic, cars, because it's transportation. So trains and cars are going to have some issues. We could see a bunch of recalls, a bunch of stuff like that. And we're going to see communications more and more in the news. One of the interesting things I've seen is besides being prone to controlling narratives, we're seeing people shut down narratives. And so that's kind of interesting to watch out in the wider world. The suppression of information is fascinating to watch. On the political stage, let's see, what else have we got? So again, we end up with the Venus-Jupiter conjunction on the East Coast and Eastern Hemisphere of the world. It actually happens late on the 22nd of May, and then on the West Coast and west of us, it will be on the 23rd, because it happens early in the morning for us on the 23rd. And then followed just a few hours, like 4 hours later, just about, we have the Sagittarius full moon at 2 degrees of Sagittarius. And then we got Venus moving into Gemini later on in the day, all on the 23rd. So that's just going to be a day. So leading up to the full moon, we have the waxing gibbous phase. So everybody talks about, oh, I feel the full moon coming. I feel it coming. What you're feeling is the waxing gibbous phase. Remember, there's 8 moon phases. Okay. It's not just new and fall. It's not just, the quarter moon. No. The waxing gibbous phase, the 3.5 days before the full moon, tends to be kind of gritty because stuff is coming up for release. The full moon is always a release of energy. It's revealing. And this time it's in Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, is debate, philosophy. We could see stuff around religion, like religious dogma. The church has been putting out a lot of information, the Roman Catholic Church. We may hear more around that. We could see religious leaders around the world make edicts on the 23rd. There could be an issue with religious leaders on the 23rd, and that would be anywhere in any religion. Okay, so just religious leaders are up on deck. On an individual level, this full moon, it might be a little spicy. It's not going to be as spicy as if it was at the end of a sign, okay, because that's where the energy is way more intense. But we could see, an issue around gaming, okay, so game development and what have you. And people might be needing to let off some steam. We saw a lot of spiciness last week. Like, if you saw what happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Representative Crockett, which I would love her birth time, because I wasn't surprised she was an Aries. But her birth time would help a lot. But that was very, very classic examples of that energy last week. So you may have been having some of that in your own life. And if our Patreon chat is any evidence, I think a lot of people were. It's been feisty. It's been spicy. It's been stressful. And none of us like that. None of us like feeling stressed out. None of us like being distracted. None of us like losing our focus. None of us like having to deal with crap and deal with life. So what you want to do is bring your energy inside, okay, and really kind of search for your beliefs, your belief system, your own personal dogma, not your faith, your belief. What do I believe to be true? Okay. Because everybody's going to be fighting over what the truth is. And the truth, honestly, is based on the beholder. Okay. We have facts that we can agree to, like, gravity. The sun comes up and it sets. Okay. That's facts. Truth, okay, where people, it can be interesting. And when we're making assumptions, when we're not in dialogue, and it's interesting, of course, the full moon in Sag is always opposite the sun in Gemini. When we dump our curiosity in the wrong direction instead of, finding out, then things get illuminated and truth will out, okay, over time. So there is all of that. There could be something with Julian Assange coming up, probably after Jupiter in Gemini happens. Last time Jupiter was in Gemini, it was 2012. So if you go back to 2012 and you start thinking, what was going on? Okay, what was going on in 2012? All right. Find out about that. Think about that. But what you don't want to do, I was talking to a friend, I have some plans. Speaking of, just wait, there's going to be some cool stuff coming up here on the podcast. I was talking to a friend, and they were like, oh my gosh, back in 2012, because they had heard another astrologer, and they were like, so they said I had to look back 12 years. I'm like, yeah, partially. And I'll explain why it's only partially. But in 2012, I did this thing and it set me on this path. I'm like, oh yeah, it was a catalyst moment. And Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. So we're starting a new 12-year cycle. You're not looking at a repeat. You're not looking at a repeat. It's not a replay. Everything works in a spiral. Okay. It doesn't work just on a wheel that just goes around and around and around. There's spirals. So in 2012, we had different astrology than we have in May of 2024. When Jupiter ingressed into Gemini in 2012, Mars was in a different spot, Saturn was in a different spot, Uranus was in a different spot, Pluto was in a different spot, Neptune was not in the same space. Okay. So the astrology was not the same. So you're not going to have an exact replay, but you want to look at the themes. We have to broaden our perspective here. Okay. But that was a year that some interesting stuff came down. So it'll be there, and there was a lot of windstorms. So hold on to your hat. There's going to be some storms brewing. I know we've had a lot already, but there's even more on the way. And some of these storms are internal. Okay. It's really easy to get frustrated with other people, right? I do. I get frustrated with people. But if I self-examine, I can go, oh, well, I can do this better, right? Or maybe I was running too hard and too fast and wasn't taking a breath, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not about blaming self. It's just like self-examining, right? We can all do that. That's what grown-ups do, right? We take a look at ourselves. And that's really important right now. Before we react, before we do anything, before we get upset, before we take things on, we need to take a breath and just, what's my objective? We need to be a little bit strategic. This full moon is requiring strategy. Sagittarius is also very goal focused. It's very goal oriented. It's very strategic. It's very much about taking the journey. And if you're just focused on the destination and you haven't focused on other bits of it, it can be very frustrating. If you think, oh, I'm going to go to that mountain, and you don't plot out that mountain is 20 miles away, and then you got to walk, up 11,000 feet to get to the summit. It may sound like a good idea at the time, but, 10 miles in, you're like, oh, wow, I packed a lot of things I didn't need. I've only used half of what's in my pack so far, right? We're going to find that in our internal selves. Okay, we're going to find that in our internal selves this week. So pay attention to that. Be a good week to journal, because there's going to be a lot of historic events. So document. Yeah, we're living in historic times. I know everybody's sick of it. Jeez. Watch your nervous systems this week as well, especially starting Monday. If you've been under a tremendous amount of strain, with the sun moving into Gemini, and then the rest of the Gemini action happening plus the full moon, you want to make sure you're taking it easy. All right. And mentally, give yourself a chance to purposely check out every once in a while. Trying to overwork the brain, over problem solve is going to be a problem. Okay. It's going to be a problem. So that's important to remember. It's very important to remember that you have a physical vehicle that needs to be taken care of. Don't tell me to do it too. Oh, I know, me too. I'm working on that. Hydrate. Slow down. If you find yourself rushing from thing to thing and not finishing anything, dropping balls, missing emails. Boy, I did last week. There's a lot going on here behind the scenes. There's stuff going on in my personal life. There's stuff going on I've got like multiple things I'm doing in my business right now. There's a lot going on, like to a point where I've been talking about needing to hire an assistant. Well, I finally broke down and talked to somebody who had said, hey, I have a cousin, and made an appointment to speak with them and to see if I can get them to work on my scheduling and help organize my life a little bit, because I dropped balls, missed some emails that I didn't need to miss. And it happens when we're running and we're doing too much, and we're all going to find out where we're not being effective, where we're not being efficient, where we're not meeting objectives. Okay. And our objectives for our goals, right? That's important. Okay. So that's up on deck this week. Couple of things you can do: use sticky notes. It really isn't a bad thing to be a little organized this week, because there's going to be a lot of information coming at us hard and fast. It's going to be very easy to get distracted. It's going to be very easy for us to have enough and kind of put the brakes on. It's going to be very easy for us to want to be on our pulpit. Okay. Preaching and teaching, right? It's going to be very bright. Like, there's going to be a lot of bright light shown on different things. And we're seeing the beginning, again, with these full moons happening at early degrees. It is a revelation. It is a harvest, but it's the harvest of something that's just beginning. It's not the full fruit of it, right? It's the beginning phases of things. So there's that up on deck. Breathe. If you're in the mystery school, I made a meditation. That's a good thing to listen to throughout the week. It wasn't just for the day I made it. Feel free to use that. I had planned to have a lot more content made, but there's all manner of things happening, like I said, behind the scenes. My daughter's still in Bergen, and we're still working on paperwork. And it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So we're breathing through it. Breathing through it. Finished up the beginning astrology class, though. That was great. That was just the very, very beginning of learning astrology, understanding what it is beyond the popular talk. And it sets the foundation for natal chart foundations, which sets the stage for intermediate astrology. So natal chart foundations is where you get your basic skills at reading a chart, looking at a chart, and then intermediate moves you into deeper interpretations and deeper skill building. And so I've had some requests for the natal chart foundations, and I'm just looking that one over. So to see if I can fit it in my schedule. I'll know more after this week on if I'm going to put that one out again. It'll come out pretty fast. If I start it, I'll probably start it in June because I want to be done before October. Because October cometh, my friends. And so I want you to understand, as stressful as it is now, it's going to be a lot more stressful in October. Not just in the outer world, but in our inner worlds. We're reshaping self. So my advice, especially since we have the Venus-Jupiter conjunction going on, you got to look at what's working. What's working? Where is the energy flowing? Okay. And stinking thinking isn't going to help this week because you're going to miss some real opportunities. It's going to be the difference between a lucky save, you drop grandma's precious dish and you manage to have the fast reflexes to catch it kind of luck, which is great and important, or you actually take action on an impulse and get things done. And that's very important. Okay. And then when we look at are we prepared to catch what's coming to us? If you don't really believe something's coming your way, you ever watch little kids play ball, right? And one little kid's sitting out in left field, the ball never gets hit to them. By the way, I was that kid. The ball never comes their direction, so they're looking at the trees, or right field, not left field, right field, looking at the trees, and then all of a sudden the ball comes their direction, and they're like, everybody's yelling at them. They finally they get beamed in the head with it because ball came right to them, but they weren't ready to catch it. And we do that in life a lot. Okay. You want to be able to have your bucket ready. And the way you do that is pay attention to what's going right. Okay. So let's say somebody breaches a boundary, but you set a boundary. Okay. So they breached your boundary and then they come at it again and you put a boundary at it. Instead of being like, oh man, I can't believe they're pushing my boundaries, be like, hey, but I did set it and I enacted it myself, because boundaries are rules we give ourselves. So if you say, I'm not going to let somebody talk to me that way, and then you tell them, hey, stop doing that, and they keep doing it, and you just say, stop. That's no. You have to ask yourself, what am I going to do if they keep going? What's my boundary? Okay. What's my boundary? What am I doing? Okay. How do I do this for me? Okay. So if you kept a boundary, you go, oh, I did that. I kept a boundary. I'm really happy with myself. Instead of like, oh, that dirty rotten so-and-so. Because you want to put the focus on what's going right. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be something seemingly inconsequential to somebody else. As long as you find it a big dealio, it's fine. As long as you find it important. That's what matters. You've got to look at what's going right. You may not have everything you want or need, But what do you have that you enjoy, that you like? Did you have a good cup of tea today? Did the water taste good? Okay. Because, just as much as we can have that day where, you spill coffee on your white shirt, you have to go change, you're trying to get out the door, you can't find your keys for 10 minutes, you finally find your keys, you walk out the door, step in some kind of poop, have to scrape your shoe off before you even get in the car to drive, right? You know how those days go. I hope you didn't have one today, right? And you just get in this downward spiral, right? And it just doesn't help. If you can start your day being like, well, I didn't get as much sleep as I wanted, but I got sleep. Yeah. I had time to drink my coffee this morning. That's a good thing. All right. I had an extra pair of shoes. I could change into my shoes. Yeah, that guy almost got me on the freeway, but he didn't. Boy, my guides are on it today. If you can turn that's not toxic positivity. It's not displacement. It's seeing the actual fact. Because if somebody almost hits you, they didn't hit you. That's the fact. They didn't. Okay. I use this example all the time because I hear people talk about these things all the time. And one of the ways I knew I had healed after years and years and years and years of work, because I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I knew I didn't have it after a very near-miss car accident, because I did not get out of my car to go kick somebody's butt. And 2, I carried on about my day. I didn't think about it. And it was close. Like, it was a 2-incher away moment from a head-on. In fact, I relaxed and thought, well, it's been a good life. That would have been my last thought. It's been a good life. The only reason I even remember it is because I went about my day. I was cooking dinner. My then husband walked in and said, "Oh, how was your day?" And I said, "Oh, somebody almost killed me today in the car." He's like, "What?" I'm like, and then I went, "Wait, I haven't thought about it all day. I hadn't obsessed about it. I hadn't thought about all the different things that could have happened. I was fine. I had no stress over it." I was like, "What the heck?" So I was like, "Wait a minute, I gotta talk to my therapist. This is weird." And he was like, "Oh, absolutely. We need to do a reassessment. This is crazy cool." Because I didn't make a story out of it, because nothing happened. What could have happened didn't happen. There were a lot of things that could have happened. The thing that happened, I didn't get hit. And so I went about my day. And let me tell you, good things kept coming. Right. By the way, that was 2012. Yeah. So, good things happen. And so if somebody almost hit you, you didn't get hit. The almosts, it could have, but it didn't. It didn't. And that's the important thing to remember. You want to maybe try to meditate a couple times a day. You can listen to guided meditations, music. It's not about going to a blank slate in your head. It's about calming your nervous system down. One of the best ways I know to do that is to breathe. Count your breathing. Not inhaling, not okay, not through the chest, to belly breathing. In through the nose, if you can. Not everybody can breathe through their nose. Okay, but if you can't breathe through your nose, then very slowly through the mouth. Okay. And you count it. You just inhale slow. Exhale slow. And you do it until you feel a little more relaxed. You're giving your brain oxygen. That's brain food. You're going to slow it down, because one of the things we do when we're stressed out, we hold our breath. We tense our muscles. This puts us straight into fight and flight. Okay. And the energy of this week is spicy. Everything's going to seem bigger than it really is. And people, it won't really, like, I would not try to problem solve a whole lot this week. I would not try to come to resolutions this week. I would not. I would ask to defer and just say, hey, can we take a rain check? Can we work on this later? And that may be taken wrong too. Okay. Because that's the energy of the moment. Okay. It's important to bring your energy inside and understand, where is my agency right now? Okay. How can I create security and value in myself? What is my value in myself? So, how do we deal with the energy of May 23rd? Because as much as there is that Jupiter-Venus conjunction, the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, as much as there's that, we have the Sun in a pretty good separating trine to Pluto. And it will be really easy for things to be taken out of context. So, as I've been recording this, the Iranian State News Agency released the fact that indeed the president of Iran and the foreign minister died in that crash. Now, this is bad weather, but there's going to be all kinds of speculation. I told you there would be something that set everybody on a... Okay. It happened a couple days after I said it would happen, but it happened in the same week. Okay. So things are going to be like Tinder dry. And I don't mean Tinder, the dating app. I'm talking about Tinder that you use to start a fire. Everything is just matchstick dry right now with Mars and Aries. And then you have Venus and Jupiter, which are benefic, and we're going to have some close saves. This is why I think we're not going to have World War III, to be honest. This is our divine intervention, folks. On a personal level, you've got to remember that your values, what you think is important, the hill you're going to die on, it is now magnified. Everybody's going to have a line in the sand. And with the Sun in a trine to Pluto, it's so easy for that to, like, a small spark can then, like, go kaboom. Okay. It can be very explosive, very quick. That's interpersonal relationships. That's extended relationships. That's close relationships. I'm sure I'm going to hear about a lot of breakups. People are going to have fighting words this week. And Mercury, let me take a look at that chart. Mercury is in Taurus. So people are being stubborn. People are not going to budge on their beliefs. Okay. People are not going to, Mercury is moving into a square with Saturn. So this is going to be just a whole can of whoop ass. Okay. And people are going to be at loggerheads. Okay. So before you decide I'm going to die on that hill, ask yourself what you really want to get out of it. Ask yourself what you want to get out of it. Okay. Ask yourself if the repercussions and the consequences are worth it. And if they're worth it, go for it. Go for it. I told somebody this week, you're either learning or you're growing. Okay. Everything teaches us something. Everything helps us grow. All right. This week is going to be something else. And it already is. We're already feeling that exaggeration of the magnification, because exaggeration is a key word for Jupiter. People are feeling the grip of insecurity. People are tired of the changing moments. People are tired of the status quo. People are tired of the smoke and mirrors. And there's going to be some big truth revealed out in the world. And this could happen in our inner worlds as well. That make us all go, oh, maybe things weren't the way I thought they were. Maybe I need to step back, because you're going to see a lot more factors around you. Okay. The full moon happens at 6:31 a.m. on the 23rd. That's on the West Coast, Pacific time, which means it's 9:31 a.m. Eastern. And I think we're going to see some stuff happening in Asia. I think there's going to be an international incident. This could be Taiwan, China. This could be the Philippines. This could be over in Iran. And don't be so quick to think it was an international plot. It could be, but that was really bad weather. So to have a helicopter fly into bad weather would almost make me think there's some internal strife happening in the country. Which could be due to outside fomentation, but nobody knows for sure. So anybody, like, there's a bunch of armchair analysts out on the social medias, and they're busy saying, oh, I bet it was this and I bet it was that. And you read through all the comment sections and everybody has an opinion. Nobody knows until there is a fact. Now, there may be a fact, there may be an admission on that full moon. That could happen. But conjecture gets you nowhere. Conjecture gets you nowhere. You need to look for the evidence. Okay, look for the evidence. And I don't mean your spidey senses. Look for the evidence and then be careful with it. Because it's just like when people say the math doesn't lie. No, math lies all the time. Politicians use statistics all the time. The statistic isn't necessarily wrong, but how they use to spin it paints a different story. It's a very Sagittarian thing. Meaning in theme, not that Sagittariuses do this, okay? It's a very Sagittarian thing because story matters, and story is perception-based, and our beliefs are perception-based. So this is something really important to remember, not just in the wider world, but in our internal world this week. So that's the big stuff. That's the big stuff. And then after the full moon, after we blow a little bit, after we've all had a little bit enough, after we get through a few things, then we have Jupiter moving into Gemini. Well, first we have Venus move into Gemini. Let's see that, because that, like I said, we've got some magic with this. Okay, we've got some magic with this, and it's damn good we've got the Venus-Jupiter conjunction happening right now, because otherwise we probably would see a kaboom. So the Venus, let's look at Venus first. Get some good news. Get some good news. So let's see. We're almost there. Using my handy dandy animation tool. Oop. I'm sitting there watching Jupiter instead of Venus. I'm like, oh, it's moving around. Okay. All right. So Venus moves into Gemini at 1:31 p.m. Okay. 1:31 p.m. Pacific. All right. 1:31 Pacific. Which is like 4:31 Pacific. I mean, sorry, Eastern. 4:31 Eastern p.m. Okay. Pacific time is -7 GMT right now. For those of you not in the United States. And so, when I look at this chart, Venus is still in opposition to the moon. The moon, this is where I think people are going to start going, whoa, where's the art of diplomacy? Where's the art of words? So we're going to go from being very, very stubborn on the brink of some big bad stuff to suddenly, hey, maybe we need to have some communication. So people are going to want to communicate. All you Venus Gemini folks, get ready. Get ready. It's that time. Every 14 months, we get a Venus return. Remember, return doesn't happen until the planet returns exactly to the degree and minute it is in the birth chart. Yes. So I think we'll see some very quick diplomacy. Venus will be in a trine with Pluto for a couple days. This is some also lucky breaks, lucky saves. We might have a hurricane heading directly for some destination and it veers off. Okay. I think we see a lot of close saves, a lot of close shaves. We get really, really close to some big bad stuff. And it isn't as bad as it could be. Okay. So as we go through that day, it's going to be interesting. That's all I got to say. So let's move and look at when Jupiter is going to move into Gemini. So Jupiter moving into Gemini on the 25th, and it does that. It does it actually at 9:31 p.m. Pacific, which is actually after midnight on the 26th. It's like 1:31 a.m. Eastern. And Jupiter is kind of kissing Venus just a little bit. It's a separating conjunction. So it's a good time to reevaluate what you want, get clear inside your mind, and you could rapidly manifest something. I do think we might see a big windstorm kick up. Definitely a hurricane. This could, where would it go to? It's east of us. So Gulf of Mexico into the Caribbean. We might see might be in, that's an interesting one. So northeast. So it could be a nor'easter too, a weird nor'easter. There's a weird storm. We also might see some rumblings happening in some volcanoes. And Mercury is in a pretty interesting square at that point. It's in an approaching square with Saturn. So you're going to have people squealing like piggies on the political front. This could be surprise witnesses. This could be people standing up. I think it's going to get ornery more and more in Congress. When the moon is in Aquarius, and this will be on the 27th, that's also going to be a little fascinating because as it conjuncts Pluto, it's in a trine with Venus. And it's interesting. I think the international community is really going to be putting pressure on the world powers. Okay. I do. Now, Matilda and I talked about this stuff in our event. What in the world? And we called a lot of what's already happened. And we were looking at May, June, and July and hinted into the fall. Okay. Because I'm afraid this just gets more intense as we move through the summer, and we're kind of lucky that Pluto's in the early degrees of Aquarius, because when a planet's in the early degrees, it's just getting started. It's just started. It hasn't built up a lot of speed yet. It hasn't built up a lot of momentum. If you can kind of think of like a snowball going downhill, when it starts at the top, it doesn't have any rocks or twigs or anything in it. But when it goes down a mountainside, it starts gathering speed, right? Well, we get Pluto in Capricorn at the end of the sign, September through November. So September 1st through November 19th of 2024. And that's the full weight of Pluto in Capricorn. It's not going to... Pluto in Aquarius right now isn't feeling the same. We actually have it lighter. And we're also very, very lucky right now Pluto is retrograde. So not only does it have not as much oomph, it's still a lot, but it doesn't have as much oomph. It also is retrograde, giving us a chance to pull back and prepare. And so what we want to do is, Pluto exaggerates things that need to go. Okay. What needs to go? Our insecurities, our worries about what other people think, not necessarily being kind to ourselves, not seeing our part in the whole, waiting to be picked instead of stepping up and participating, all of that. And you might think it's, well, I have imposter syndrome or I have these things. And I'm not saying those things don't exist, but I will say, they don't serve us. Okay. They oppress us. They are narratives that hold us back. Okay. And yeah, life's scary. It can be really scary. Gotta take some breaths with this one. We all get scared. We all get worried. We all get nervous. We all get terrified at times. So we have to take action. We have to do forward movement. And if we don't, well, then life is happening to us. And this is a great time to use as much agency as we can. Like, you don't have to be the best at everything to give something a try, because confidence is built by experience. And if you talk to older people, they sometimes probably sound really cavalier. Like, I'm sure I sound really cavalier, but that's because we've survived. We may not have thrived, but we've survived a lot of bad days. We've survived things we didn't think we'd ever make it through. We've laid on the floor and cried our eyes out. We've had days we couldn't get out of bed, but we also knew that nothing happened when we wouldn't get out of bed, right? So sometimes you just have to get up and go. All right. The energy will feel heavy this week. Do what you can. Don't beat yourself up. Be careful of the stories you tell yourself, especially once Venus moves into Gemini. Because the one thing I've learned about it, and I have it in my natal chart, is how I talk to and about myself is exactly the size of the basket that I can receive in. Okay. It's the narrative I have about myself. It's the narrative, how I think, how I talk, how I do things for myself, inside of myself, is exactly the size of the basket I can collect whatever is coming to me. And that's why it's so important to be mindful. Are we always mindful? No, because we're human. We're human. Every single person in a body is human and having human experiences and has good and bad days, good and bad years. A lot of times when I'm reading charts for people and I'll bring up a year and they'll go like, oh my God, that was the worst year of my life. I'm like, yeah, we don't tend to forget those. What was your best? Sometimes there's years where we just have a lot of loss. Sometimes there's years where it's just crunchy. Sometimes there's years where things happen that are so out of our control, it's crazy. And the reason why older people are sometimes cavalier, and you see that, and I'll be having some on my podcast. Old people who've lived some life, who are metaphysicians. We're not necessarily old, but we're older. We're certainly not in our 40s anymore. Yeah, you thought I was going to say 20s. Couldn't pay me to go back to my 20s. Could not. I kind of like to have my 40s back, though. I'm really enjoying my 50s, but they're rapidly moving. So we spend a lot of time worrying and being concerned about things that aren't happening. I've talked about this all year long. Worry is a misuse of our imagination. So is conjecture. So is like, and conjecture just means you're trying to figure out what's going on without all of the information. You can't know. So again, as everybody talks about what's going on with Iran, nobody knows until somebody presents evidence, and we may never know. But the actual truth of the matter is, just because some government official gives a press conference and says this is what happened, doesn't mean that's what happened. But conjecture isn't going to be true either. And that's what I'm trying to say. So put your attention on what you need to do for you this week. Look at your objectives. What matters? What absolutely has to be done? I would set a priority list. And not everything is urgent. Okay? Some things are urgent. Not everything is. Okay? Alrighty. I think it's time for some patron shoutouts. Right. You heard the music. We've got our patron shoutouts. Every single week I shout out our newest patrons. We've got Caitlin, Carrie, April, Amy, Ray, Marissa, Jessica, Saul, Michelle, Stephanie, Kelly, Sue, Jess, Sylvia, Lila, Francesca, Mary, Kin Finn, Laura, Becca Lynn, Laura Master 3000, Jesse, Banana, Aaron, Allison, Jess Street, Cameron, Amy McDonald, Jen, Blanca, Mia, Carla, Charles. And I tell ya, it's a wild week, patrons. And it's hopping in the Patreon chat at the Awake Space. So it's hopping. Come on in. Make sure you have the app or look on the computer. If you access Discord from like a laptop or a desktop, some type of not phone device, you can see all the photos attached to the news stories, right? So, but on the app, on the phone, at least on the Apple version, we just see links. So there's that. So somebody's got a flooded apartment. I'm looking at the venting chamber. Yes, I predicted a flood in that person's apartment. Oh no, they have a personal lake. That's not good. I told you guys we were going to have some storms, so. But it's a 2 on their scale of 1 to 10 on the disaster reading, though. So that's good. Had some people get a hold of me about readings, and that was interesting. This is from Ashley. A note to say your readings are always so on target. This month has been a little wild with work, and I was drawn to revisit my year ahead reading for this month. You mentioned a conference I'd be invited to travel and thought I'd be networking and maybe have an opportunity from it. And not happy with my job. All true and playing out slightly differently than my brain had imagined. I'm traveling next week for customers. I was invited to a conference but declined the opportunity. I've been networking online and I have an interview from this tomorrow. Excited to see what's to come. Appreciate you and your work. Well, there you go, Ashley. Remember, patrons have a very, very special discount depending on your tier this month. And I'm doing natal readings until May 31st. And then I'm going to close those up because year ahead readings will be opening at the end of June. They're not the same kind of reading. So if you've been wanting me to dive into your natal chart and help you see yourself in a very well-rounded way, okay? Because a lot of times when people read astrology charts or natal charts, they make it good and bad, black and white. Yeah, there's trauma in a chart, but we can see the healing pathway. We can see your strengths. And it's not about blowing smoke up people's butts. It's literally about empowering you, understanding, your skills and your strengths and how to alleviate your fears and how to move forward on the healing path. Not just the healing path, but like as in healing from everything, but just knowing, you're valuable. You're valuable. You had a 1 in 400 trillion chance of being human. You don't have to prove your value to anybody, but you do need to know it. And that's my goal, is to help you see yourself so you're not reliant on other people to determine your value, that you don't need them to see you, hear you, praise you to know your value. Okay. You need to know that on the inside, because if you're overly reliant on the thoughts of somebody else, you're always going to be disappointed, because nobody can keep their attention on you the entire time. And so you got to keep the attention on yourself. That's not a narcissistic thing to do. It's not, because you're still thinking about other people, unless you're a real narcissist. That's just not the case. You do have to think about you, your needs, what you need, and how to give those to yourself. And you have to have confidence in who you are and your skills and your abilities. And that's what I highlight in natal readings. Okay. Year ahead is timing. It's just pure timing. It's not even, it's some strategy, but it's mostly like, this is happening this month. This is happening this month. It's a very detailed reading. And I only open those up twice a year. So get ready. Those are coming up in June. I always open them up around the solstice. Classes. I'm thinking about offering some workshops and some classes. Again, I'm not going to teach it like intermediates. That's all I'm doing. I'm not doing another intermediate class this year. I probably will do, like I said earlier in the podcast, a natal chart foundations class. And then, I haven't decided when. Like I said, probably June. I'll let you know. Patrons will be the first to know, because they always are. And I'm going to be doing some workshops, probably around like things like transits and understanding lunar returns. And I might do some more group events, like group lunar returns. And maybe even just some group natal readings, things like that. So we'll see. We'll see what I do. Alrighty. Let's get on with the rest of the podcast. So let's look at what's coming up this week in specific. I talked about how you can handle the energy this week and what you really need to focus on. Now let's see what's in the headlines. To tell you, we're going to have relief this week, but I don't think we're going to. I think this week is going to be very spicy. I think it's going to be very stabby. Very stabby. Starting today, Monday, I think we can expect some very spicy situations. And I talked about that, but let's check out what's in the headlines. Let's see. And it's an early Monday morning while I'm winding this up, just because of the way life has worked this weekend. Oh, it's funny. I just was looking ahead as I click these. I'm reading from the magazine because I do my predictions in the magazine for the headlines. Patrons at the $15 level and up get the magazine and other stuff. This month they got a very special discount on natal readings with me. All right, so Monday morning, which we're sitting at, starts with the moon in Libra, and then the moon will pop into Scorpio, squaring off with Pluto. Okay, so we're going to see social media companies under scrutiny or discussed, huge windstorm or strange weather, weird lights in the sky, or lenticular clouds make the news. And we did have the meteorite. This is from May 18th through the 20th. We did see the meteor hit in Spain. More protests. Prosecutor makes a bold move. Judge could make a big decision. We might hear about a big decision on Monday, maybe in the Trump case. Issues with law enforcement in court case. High winds, tornadoes, hail. Announcement of legal proceedings in high-profile case. There could be another one associated with Trump or people associated with Trump. You could see a bomb explosion or infrastructure failure, or all of it. That's global. New information leaked about U.S. officials and or financial matters to do with an elected official. We may see stuff come out about MTG. It could be bad news for Trump on Monday. Missiles could be launched That's one of them. Big violence could be war, could be public violence, air travel disrupted, issues, and that would have, yeah, that's interesting. So that was May 18th through the 20th. Issues to do with jet stream or ocean currents, unseasonable weather, climate change data comes in with some startling news. Issues with electric or hybrid vehicles. I didn't see anything about that in the news, but maybe when things move into Gemini. Issue with new technology or AI causes concerns. Infrastructure failures, including bridges, freeways, overpasses, dams, or building collapses. Leader challenged, attempted coup, or official deposed. A vote of no confidence. Well, we had an attempted coup in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And of course, we had somebody deposed in a helicopter crash. International agreements made or nullified in a surprising way. International courts. And that there was discussion of that between May 18th and the 20th. Let's see what's next. So May 20th to the 23rd. So once the moon moves into Scorpio, we could see big internet disruptions, especially May 22nd. I need to keep that in mind because my internet's been crap all weekend. Surprise attacks or massive violence. And given that the Iranian president died, I don't think it's going to be a surprise. Murder or assassination. Okay, so we could see reprisals. Big information leaks revealed or serious espionage allegations. Burst water mains or issues with drainage or public utilities. Waterborne illnesses. Water quality issues or discussion around commercial water, flood storms, high tides. Biden and or Putin could face serious health crisis or political challenge. Precious metals rise in price. Markets rise. Could see surprise rate cuts. Could see seismic activity offshore of New Zealand, Australia, Chile, mid-Atlantic ridge. Bomb threats and or terrorist alerts, Navy exercises, conflicts and skirmishes, issues with oil refineries and gas pipelines, sabotage of pipelines and or transportation of toxic waste exposed. Donald Trump gets bad legal news, graveyards, cemeteries, mortuaries, more business loan defaults, war crimes, and mass graves discovered. Okay. May 23rd through the 25th, issue with Trump's family or home properties, arsons, wild bushfires, high winds. This is while the moon's in Sagittarius. Remember, we got that full moon, and that's early. So that's on the 23rd. Bombshell headline around a legal matter. That could be an issue with Trump. International incident of note could include conflict. So this is where I was talking about people scrambling for diplomacy. This is kind of nuts so we're very, very lucky Venus and Jupiter are conjunct because we're dodging some bullets here, but we may not be dodging them all. So we got to keep our eyes out for things. Maritime incidents, accidents, or issues in ports, climbing or hiking accident, rock slide, landslide, or issues in a national park or public lands, espionage, intelligence agencies, accusations of spying, treason, breach of agreements, Julian Assange in the news, increased seismic activity in all seismic zones, massive storm or issues to do with a massive storm. Could be a hurricane or something that starts at sea and goes through more than one country. Citizen armies could rally around in an attempt to defend Palestine. We hear about that here and there. Not a lot. It's not easy for anybody to actually get in there. We could see a church official under investigation. The Pope's health or other religious leaders' health could be in question. Legal proceedings, high-profile case announced. This could do with Diddy. Issue with publishers, newspapers, and or journalists or censorship in the news, data breach, information leaks, tensions rise in the Taiwan Straits and South China Sea, accidents with missiles and or satellite launches or issues with satellites. And this could be to do with internet disruptions, use of drones or sea-to-air missiles, even ICBMs, escalation of existing tensions, issues with radiation and or toxins. I would see that as a spill or a leak, not bombs. International courts make bold moves. So I think we may see some censuring. And to round out the week, May 25th through the 27th, the moon in Capricorn. Erosion causing storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, changing temperatures, thaws or freezes, even snow in lower elevations. I know it's almost June, but there might be places that get some weird weather. And that could also be like Australia. It's wintertime there. So it's southern hemisphere could see thaws and freezes. Attempts to expand aggression in the Levant. So an expansion, not even in the region, in the entire region, beyond the Levant even. Economic or trade sanctions announced by Global Alliance. Infrastructure failures, roads, bridges, dams, buildings, rail systems, power grids, and water systems. Those are all, the security of those are up in the news. Workers' rights and strikes or union busting. Big corporation or financial institution has big loss or failure. That's global. Increased seismic activity up to 6.5 offshore. Political or public figure in crisis or removed violently from office. Big missile attack or satellite failure. Something makes a big boom. I wonder what that'll be. Conflict escalates or intensifies in all active war zones. CEO, CFO, could be either or and both, depending. Removed from position by board of directors, celebrity scandal, or breakup. BRICS nations make moves to financially undercut current market space. Leader deposed or coup d'etat, or world leader dies. Seismic activity increased up to 6.5 or volcanic action. Now, so sometimes I just write this and I'm not looking at both columns, and I have everything very magnified for my vision. So if I'm writing about something twice in those headlines, there's emphasis in the charts. Can I tell you exactly where that seismic activity will be? Not really. I'm just going to say, if you live in a seismic zone, pay attention. Always be ready. But I also think Iceland might pop off at that time. Issue with oil pipeline platform or drilling operation at sea. European Union has a crisis. Could also be that NATO has a crisis. Issue with British Prime Minister or MP. Big layoffs from major corporation and or a retailer. Ice melt and rising sea levels. That's what's in the headlines next week, or this week, I should say, my friends. It's going to be dicey. It's really going to look like people are pushing for World War III. It really is. We're going to see a lot of stuff happen that makes people worry. I don't see it going there. But I do see a lot of conflict brewing. I think there's a scramble for diplomacy. It's going to heat up. We could see an increase in tit for tat violence, and that could be like one person bombs and then there's a retaliation. There could be terrorist attacks. Again, I would keep my eye out if I lived in somewhere like New York, Washington, D.C., Houston, Dallas, Austin, Miami, maybe Seattle, Los Angeles, Mexico City, any of the big cities, London, Berlin, Paris, Marseille for some reason, Madrid, Barcelona, countries in Eastern Europe. So we've got our eye on Georgia. We've got our eye on Romania, the Balkans. Keep your eye on the Balkans. And Poland. Matilda and I talked a lot about that in our event. So those of you who got to attend. You got your recording to refer to. If you wanted the recording, we weren't going to sell those, but we got a lot of requests. And so both Matilda and I have the exact same recordings up in our Patreon shops because we know that, people are going to support who they support. We're okay with whoever getting it. Okay. We're fine with that. So, if you want to get it out of my shop, it's in my Patreon shop. It costs the same as it did for everybody else. We didn't discount the recording at all. We have both events listed. They're packed with information. They are packed. So it's going to be a wild week. Again, my focus is kind of on like Eastern Europe. So Eastern Europe, and then of course the Middle East is going to be hotting up. Just the way it is. It's just the way of the world right now. I think we dodge bullets. I think we are fortunate that Venus is now moving into Taurus. I'm a little concerned that we have Mercury in Taurus squaring off with Saturn, because I think any attempts at diplomacy are going to not work. It's going to break down. Talks are going to break down. People aren't going to want to change position. They're not going to want to try to find a way out. Things have gone a little too far. And I think we stand on the brink of something. I think climate change or some other crisis is going to help us out here. It's going to be wild. So it'll be really easy to have a lot of stress and anxiety this week. Again, I want to remind you, the best way to deal with this moment in time, the best way to manage all the big feelings that are up on deck, all the intensity, is to, take deep breaths, count your breathing, make sure you're sitting down, having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Maybe you need to cut down the caffeine a little bit and go with, maybe some warm water with lemon juice in it or something. Take a bath, get in the shower, wash off the stress. That's going to be essential. Get enough sleep, get enough rest. That's all important. And then things will be okay. Well, or they won't, but we get through it. We make it through this time. Is it World War III? No, it's not. It's not. It's going to look like it. There's a lot of divine intervention in these charts. And it could be that there's a natural event that interrupts diplomatic action. And so that could be like an earthquake, a volcanic event, a hurricane, a big storm, and these would be sizable in their scope. Now, in Iran, if there's like an earthquake, those don't have to be humongous to cause a lot of damage. So because of the way things are built there. So just kind of, it can be a 5 and cause damage. So, it could be because Iran is prone to seismic activity. So it could be something like that. It could be a lot of things. I do think we're going to see some sizable windstorms. If you live somewhere where tornadoes come through, do be mindful this week. It's going to be very active. We could see some significant storms. Again, hurricanes, East Coast, keep your eye out on that. Gulf Coast, keep your eye out on that. What about Florida? You too. Everybody's thinking, just because I didn't mention your state, if you're in that geographical region, keep your eye open. Okay. Southern California, please stop freaking out about earthquakes. I don't think we have to worry about a sizable one until September. We might have like 4s, 4.5s, in various areas, but I don't think we're looking at anything big until September. But I could be wrong, so that's why you always want to be prepared. Okay, don't just take my say so. Okay, earthquakes are hard to predict. They take a lot of brain power. So it's a wild and woolly week, folks. Again, and the intensity continues as we move into Gemini season. So remember, with Gemini season, stay curious, have some fun. I know. It's like, Laurie, you just gave me all this shitty news. What do you mean have fun? But no, literally have some fun. The more you can lighten your load. Yes, there are serious, horrible things going on in the world. Whether you're having fun or trying to sit with it in an overly serious way or owning it, it's not going to make it better. Okay. It would be okay for you to enjoy an hour. Okay. And take a minute. You get back into it. It doesn't mean you don't care. Okay. Yeah. The people living through it do not have that luxury. You're right. They don't. I don't know that I ever really held it against anybody when I was going through it, that they weren't. Okay. Take a minute. Pace yourself. It's a long game. And if you burn out, you're not helping anybody. So there's lots of simple ways to be supportive. There's lots of simple ways to take action. And you also need to take a break once in a while. You really do. Okay? I'm not telling you to check out forever. I'm not telling you that you're a fragile flower. But this week, it'll be really easy to have your nervous system overloaded. And if we are all in fight and flight, it is not productive. Okay? Well, that's what I've got for the podcast this week, folks. Next week, we are looking at, let me see, what are we looking at next week? Let me find my calendar. Next week, we're just adjusting. Okay, there's still the lunations, but we don't have any major ingresses. We're just packing it in. We're packing it in. There's some cool stuff. Well, Venus will be conjunct the sun. That'll be nice. Venus conjunct the sun. That'll be a pretty day, right? That'll be. There we go. So that'll be June 4th. So that'll be after next week. Will be the Venus Sun conjunction. And I'm sure everybody in the world will be like, the Cassini. Because it's a cool word. It's a cool word. It's fun to use words. But anyway, so that's coming up in June. So I think we're just dealing with the dust settle next week. We'll find out on the podcast. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week on the Awake Space Astrology Podcast.